Get ready to explore where IT value expands beyond service management. Today I've got on one of our best guests. He's a top 25 influencer in ITSM, founder and managing director at TaUB Solutions. He's got more than 19 years of IT experience, an impressive tenure at HP, a wealth of experience in different facets of service management like IT governance, business relationship management, agile, DevOps, and SRE. Welcome to Ticket Volume, news and information for improving IT experiences. Powered by InvGate. Suresh GP is a DevOps trainer, an SRE practitioner trainer, and also hosts his own podcast called Taking You Beyond SRE. I also know that Suresh is part of TaUB Solutions, does some simulations and sim training. So welcome, Suresh. Thanks for joining us on Ticket Volume.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Always a pleasure to be here and chat with you. Let's keep it on.
Yeah, nice. That was a heck of an introduction. You obviously have a ton of experience. The experience I am most curious about, though, is what you've been doing the last 4 or 5 years, or at least what I've seen on your threads, is really focusing on DevOps and SRE and the value that that brings to the business. So let's talk about that. What do you think actually drove that business change? What big shifts do you see in the business right now?
Well, I think just looking back, it's just about 8 years that I started this entrepreneurial gig of TaUB Solutions. It's been pretty much a roller coaster ride of what I've seen. As you know, we all started off being passionate about service management. We did it great, but that was not enough because the whole world was changing so dramatically. And there was a huge platonic shift towards DevOps and site reliability engineering. And at the end of the day, the business doesn't care a damn about whether it's DevOps, lean, service management. They wanted to look at business value. Mm-hmm. And part of the problem, Matt, is that how do you articulate business value from these best practices or principles? So that was a big ask. So whenever I was put forward to talk with the leadership team, you cannot make the techno speak language. You need to speak the language in which they could articulate business value. So that was my first aha moment, saying that you can be the best technocrat in the world, but you're useless if you're not able to articulate business value. So I was on a constant quest of searching what does business value mean. And as we start to go through that, the part was that we don't have an end-to-end visibility of the value chain and value stream. So I was pretty intrigued on what else was happening, and the whole world was shifting towards velocity, stability, but more about reliability and resilience. But then the bigger part was on customer experience. So I think that in order to achieve that whole ultimatum of customer experience, how do you connect the dots? So I was always fascinated to connect the dots, and that's how I landed up in DevOps and SRE and whatnot moving forward.
Okay. So let's talk about that a little bit. I'd like to unpack that just a little bit more. When you say SRE, like we hear the term stands for site reliability engineering. Does that term still make sense? Sometimes I try to think of it like system reliability engineering. What do you think?
Well, I think we have to go a little bit back to history because they didn't have a better word when Google coined SRE, so they mentioned it as site reliability engineering. But you can actually take it in a manner that whatever product and services that you're delivering, is it actually making sure that it's available 24/7, 365 days without any degradation of performance? I'm happy that whatever you look at it, whatever works for you is okay. But as long as you understand that reliability lies on the eye of the beholder, right? I mean, what is reliability to you is very different from reliability to me, you know? So I have absolute lack of patience. If the page doesn't load within 5 milliseconds, right? I mean, for someone, it could be 6 seconds. So it really boils down to what the customer is demanding today. And obviously, we need to scale that up. So SRE is a word of site reliability engineering, but focusing on reliability and resilience of any products and services. Because at the end of the day, the customer rules your products and services. So we ought to be cognizant of that.
Okay. So when you think about SRE and BRM, what sort of governance or what I'll call traditional service management processes are they involved in or active in?
I think let's start with BRM because that's so passionate for me. One of the problems that we have had in service management days is we do not sometimes get a seat at the table. So every IT leader wants to earn a seat at the table, but is that easy for your business to call you with a red carpet and welcome you and say, come on board, let's do the strategy discussion together? No. Many times IT is perceived as an order taker. So how do you step this whole game from being an order taker or a service provider? Most of the people have actually been very good in contractual obligations, service level agreements and stuff, but we need to step the game to move towards a trusted advisor and a strategic partner. I think that's where there is an opportunity for IT to stay relevant. I tell people that between business and IT, can business outsource IT or IT outsource business? Now, if you say that business can outsource IT, we are all part of IT, so if we don't prove our relevance, we get outsourced. So the primary objective is to take a step back and say, what competencies and value that I can generate that IT becomes inseparable as part of being the business. So that's where the motive in which I think service management has to move from being just keeping the lights on. Though, we talk about strategy, design, operations, the most important part is it delivering business value? So the BRM is a very good governance overview where it sees, okay, whatever you're doing it as part of best practices of agile, DevOps, is it delivering the business value to all your stakeholders? If yes, then you're on the right page. Otherwise, I think we're doing it fundamentally wrong. That's how I look at these moving parts.
I love that. It makes total sense. Sort of like service management is this foundation layer. We've got DevOps and SRE kind of keeping the lights on, providing the infrastructure needed to deliver on those services, and BRM's really translating and honing that relationship. They're kind of like a sales rep between the two. I really like that. That makes sense. Let's talk about experience then, because I think when I think about experience, I think of that as like the next layer above BRM. How do you describe CX to people? How do you describe experience to people?
I think there's a difference between, there's a lot of versions of truth, right? We talked about net promoter score. So when we started with customer satisfaction surveys, we moved on to net promoter scores. We talked about churnout rate. But I think now we talk about experience. That means every touch point of interface with your business partners is changing the whole dimension of how we operate. In fact, they co-own your brand. So what's going to happen is that today I think everybody does a phenomenal job with respect to products and services. There's no absolute question in terms of contractual obligations, we're doing it. But I think we're still lingering around the watermelon syndrome, right? Everything looks green outside, but it's bleeding red. I want to change it from watermelon to a kiwi. If you look at a kiwi fruit, it's both green outside and inside. So whether it is more internal facing or external facing doesn't matter. Are we able to look at that business focus and looking at consumer experience with every touch point of the journey? I think that requires a couple of points. I think we have great opportunity to look at objective data, right? So your first call resolution, your response time, resolution time, they're all very tangible facts. It's awesome, right? Mm-hmm. But we have to talk a little bit about the sentiment data. So we talk about O data and X data. The O data is more about all the objective facts that you've been looking at it, but then you need to spice it up with the X data. Because the X data gives you a feeling of how many rings did you take to pick up the call? How did you respond with empathetic? So these are some of those factors that make you feel important. I want to narrate one quote that I really believe summarizes the experience. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. I think it's all about the feeling, that experience. Think about Disney World. The experience that you have is pleasant in your memories for years. And that's what you pay. You pay for the memories and the experience. And if you think from that, everybody in the value chain will have to resonate with that. How can I make that experience really great from my perspective? So if you orchestrate the entire value chain from that, then I think you're doing a phenomenal job. But unfortunately, I think we are hidden within our own metrics and things, which you don't get the big picture of driving that customer experience.
That's so true. So true. I love a good Maya Angelou quote in there. Well put. I also like the idea of a kiwi. It shows the reality of the matter. If the kiwi is rotten, you're going to know it on the inside and the out. The customer is going to be unhappy. You're probably unhappy. Your metrics are showing that. It makes sense that there's a lot of transparency that comes from this maturity. So where can people go to learn more about SRE, BRM? Where would you send people?
Well, one of the roles that I play is a global ambassador of the DevOps Institute, and I've been really fascinated in Jane Grohl, came from the service management world, and she's doing a great job being as part of the CEO of the DevOps Institute. One of the things that the DevOps Institute does is profess the education part of it, but also they conduct some of the programs. So they have two courses, SRE Foundation course as well as the practitioner. I've been happy to be a co-author of the SRE practitioner. So when you have the best minds on earth come there and focus on a practitioner content, that's awesome. I mean, working with Google and people like that. But also what is important is today, and you would see that with the great resignation happening, people are looking at a lot of upskilling opportunities. So everybody, particularly in the service management space, I think it's a logical progression to look at site-reliability engineering because the basics are really good, strong, but now we're going into looking at monitoring, observability, and other stuff, which is much more beyond just keeping the lights on. And then look at also something like BRM Institute, which looks at certification courses like BRM and CBRM. What happens is when you do these courses, or a workshop, the mind gets expanded, and the mind once expanded does not return back to its original shape. So I think that you get better to get a lot more clarity to connect the dots. And it's always fascinating to how much people you connect with have real world experience of bringing the stories to life. So I would say that good source is to go to DevOps Institute and the BRM Institute. There's a lot of blogs, videos, as well as skill up days. So you constantly can be a part of the community. I think at the end of the day, you and I know it's all about the community that matters to make it work.
That's so true. That's so true. Thank you, Suresh. Thanks for being on today. Thanks for joining.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
And for our audience, thank you for hitting play, and I'll see you around the way. I'm your host, Matt Barron. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram as Matt Barron. Don't forget to post a review of our podcast and send us your feedback. Subscribe to Ticket Volume on your favorite platforms. Thank you for listening to Ticket Volume, a podcast powered by InvGate.